So the new part for 6.3 is something we're going to look at algebraically in future lessons, which is multiplying binomials together, as in things with two terms. So I got my algebra tiles here again, and the question I'm trying to work out here is x plus 1 times by x plus 2. Now what I have here is, you can see, first of all, I got 1x and I got a 1 unit. This is where my x plus 1 comes from. And then my x plus 2 here, I got 1x tile, and then I got 2 1s here. So this is why I set out the question. Now, the reason I put the flat tile here this way is, this x is actually x times by 1, and this tile here is 1 times by x. So it's important I actually put them this way round to make sure I can work out my area. Now, when we do area, we multiply these two things together, and basically it's the part that's in the middle. So what I do is, for these questions, is I'm going to use these tiles to actually fill in the little spaces, and then I'm going to work out what that actually gives me. Now, we might already know that x times x is x squared. Remember the exponent of 1 with an exponent of 1. And what I do is I'm just going to drag each, I'm going to drag each of these shapes in to the kind of space that they go to. Now, this picture is kind of made up of 4 different parts, as we're going to see in a second. We're always going to put our big squares up at the top here. We're then going to put rectangles to fill in these gaps on the sides here. And then at the bottom here, we're just going to use these little 1 tiles. So I can start filling this in here. It doesn't have to work perfectly. We're just trying to get it as close as we can, but we can kind of see that that one goes there. Whoops. And the problem is with these ones is just grabbing the right one. Whoops. And I got to move that one back a little bit as well. There we go. Now for this one, I've got to use the one that's twisted round. It's still an X. There we go. And then in my little spaces at the bottom, you can see that I just fill in these little squares here. So 1 and 1. And I put the lines here to show us that we're only looking for things that are inside these lines right now. So as I'm looking at this, I can see that I've got x squared. And the number of x's here, I got 1, 2, 3. And then I got 2 at the end here. So the answer to this question would be x squared plus 3x plus 2. And this idea of it being made up of 4 parts is going to be very interesting and very helpful for when we try and do this algebraically, rather than just trying to do this as a picture. Now, as I move on to my second question, x plus 2 times x plus 4, I got my x at the top here, and I got my 2 little 1s. Down the side here, I got my x, and I got my 4 little 1s. And then I'm going to try and do the same sort of thing. I'm going to put in my big squares at the top corner there, and then I'm going to fill in my rectangles. And I'm going to fill in my rectangles here. I'm surprised I haven't had a phone call before while I've been trying to make my videos. Alright, let's put that in there. And basically I'm just filling in all these little spaces that you guys can see here. And then in a minute I can start adding up what all these are. So notice I got 4 rectangles here, and that links in with this 4 here. Notice on the side here I got 2 rectangles, and that links in with that 2 here. And then as I fill this part in here, got a little bit more room for these little 1s here. In fact, I got enough room for 2 on this side here. And oops, it doesn't want to let me drop it. There we go. And then I just fill in the rest of the space. Like I say, I'm not too worried about neatness at this point. We're just trying to get the idea. And obviously you won't have algebra tiles on a real exam where you can manipulate them like this, but you could certainly draw little pictures to represent these as well. So as we're looking here, we have x squared. I got 4 x's down the side and 2 across the side. So in total, notice I have 6x. And then all my little ones here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which notice is also 2 times 4. And that's going to be an important connection for later when we try and do these. Now, what we're eventually working to is me not giving you the starting point for this question. So x plus 5, you would kind of have to do the little part yourself. So you'd have to put 1, whoops, you'd have to put an x. Remember, squared means multiply by itself as well. So this means x plus 5 times x plus 5. And it won't let me move the one that I want to. There we go. 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then you do the same down the side. You'd put your 1, and then you're going to bring 5 of these little ones down here. Might be easier if it'll let me just copy and paste this one. Let me see if it'll let me do that. Yeah, perhaps not as easy as I thought. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So squared just means multiply by itself. So x plus 5 times x plus 5. And then same thing, I can fill in my squares here. I can fill in these rectangles across the top here. I can fill these rectangles in down the side. And then for each one of these little ones, I can just fill them in as many as I need to complete that space. And then we can start to figure out what the answer would look like. I'm going to leave that one for people to try, or ones for you to try yourself. If we have extra numbers in here, like 2x plus 1, and that just means we add 2 x's at the top here. 1 is obviously just 1 again. X plus 4, I have 1x, and I have 4 1s, so that's kind of similar. Notice this time as I'm starting to fill in here, I can fit a square here. But this time, with having 2 rectangles at the top, notice how I managed to fit in 2 squares here. So my answer to begin with would actually be 2x squared, which is actually the answer to 2x times x. You can then fill in your rectangles just like you did before. And this is a good way to begin with, just to get us used to the idea of what we're trying to do, and the idea of the fact that this answer is made up of 4 different parts. The big square at the top. Now actually I have room for more rectangles here, notice. So let me put that button back for a second. Let me grab this one. So as we have the 2 rectangles on the top, that means I can have 2 rows of rectangles down the side here as well. So it just increases the number of possibilities that we can actually have. And then I can fill in my little ones here too. So 1, 2, 3, oops, and 4. So my answer then would be 2x squared, because I have 2 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of these, so 9x, and then plus 4. So it helps you practice those ideas with the tiles as well, getting used to adding and subtracting and realizing what each of those different things represents. You could do the same thing with this. 3x, you could put 3 of these across the top, 2 little ones. 2x down side, you could have 2 of those rectangles, and then 1 little square, and then you guys could fill in the middle part as well. So let me skip to one with negatives though, because they're slightly more interesting. So x plus 3, here's my x and 3 positives. So as it's negative, notice I've used the red tiles for this one. Now, as I'm filling them in to begin with, no real problems. I'm just going to put my square again in that top corner. And I'm going to fill in my little rectangles here as I go along. 1, 2, 3. But at the bottom here, as I start to fill these in, notice I've got some negatives here. So I know when I have one negative, it makes the answer negative. So I'm going to fill it in a different color. And same thing here, a negative times a positive I know is a negative. So I'm actually going to fill in this time some negative squares at the bottom. 1, 2, oops, 3, 4, 5, 6. So as we look at the answer, I got 1x squared. Now I have 3x here, but I've also got to take away 2x. So that would leave me with 1x, or just positive x. And then at the bottom here, I got 6 of those negative ones, which would give me negative 6. Now you can do the same thing with this question. The thing with this one is, and I'm only going to do the very last part, so I'm not going to fill in my 3 rectangles. I would have a negative 1 here, and then this one would be an x minus 3. So I'm leaving a little room to fill these in. Notice on this part down here for the picture, normally I'll just fill in my little squares. Notice this time I've got 2 negatives. So actually when I'm filling in that part, what I would actually do is, I would actually go back and switch it to 2 positives. And what I'm actually really doing here is, of course, negative 1 times negative 3, which is positive 3. There will be then some questions for you to try, and then hopefully you can get a similar idea. This will really help us when we try the algebraic approach, but getting you used to the idea of there being 4 sections, but also when we do something called factoring as well. This will be a really useful idea to help us work out the answers in reverse when we kind of have the answer, but we don't know what the two, and the two terms that you can see there are called factors.